Hi there. Today is Wednesday, May 14th, and I'm reading the Providence Journal and starting with the weather for the next few days. A high of 67 today, low of 58. Rather cloudy, not as warm. Uh, Winds 7 to 14 miles an hour. Overcast tonight with a brief shower or two. Winds east southeast 6 to 12 miles an hour. Tomorrow, May 15th, a high of 68. Low of 59. It'll be cloudy with a few showers. Moving on to Friday, it will be a little warmer, high of 72, low of 57, but cloudy with a shower or two. And then Saturday, high of 68, low of 57, with a strong afternoon thunderstorm. There are 3 front page articles on the Providence Journal. However, I'm only going to read 2 of them because one of them is backdated and its title is Conclave for New Pope May Take Days, Multiple Rounds of Voting Expected. And if you listen to any national or international or local news, you probably already know about Pope Leo. So I'll read the other 2 articles that are on the front page. The first one is titled Clam Rescue, a more local article. Quahoggers are dumping their catch to boost future harvests. And this is by Alex Kuffner of the Providence Journal. East Greenwich. It's not every day that you see quahoggers dumping their catch back into the water, but that's just what Mike Papa and his uncle Al Papa are doing on this spring morning. Bag after bag of just dug quahogs go over the gunwale of their skiff and into Greenwich Bay. 70 mesh onion bags in all, each one filled with roughly 300 of the precious bivalves. It's an enormous amount, especially in these days of paucity for Rhode Island's troubled quahog fishery. But Mike knows that in the end, the 3 hours of work this day will help him and a couple of hundred other commercial shell fishermen who still go out with any regularity to harvest the iconic hard-shell clam from Narragansett Bay and its environs. Without this, winter would be really tough, he says. Think of these quahogs transplanted from the tainted waters of nearby Greenwich Cove as akin to a squirrel's store of acorns. They'll sit in the cleaner waters of the bay for a few months, flushing out any contaminants from their fleshy bodies and be ready when the bed here reopens for harvesting in December, just in time for them to make it into a bowl of chowder or a plate of stuffies over the busy holiday season when consumer demand spikes. The transplant is being done under the guidance of the State Department of Environmental Management as part of an effort to replenish numbers of quahogs by moving them to areas popular with shell fishermen that can be depleted over time. Many of the quahogs will end up in the baskets of bull rakes to be sold at market, but some will remain in their sandy homes where they'll spawn and spread larvae to help repopulate Narragansett Bay. The state has carried out quahog transplants periodically since the 1950s to maintain the sustainability of the resource in local waters. In some recent years, a couple of dozen shell fishermen have come out to help, and others up to 100 have. 61 of the quahoggers take part in this transplant on May 1st. Each one has a catch limit of about 30 bags. The DEM is paying them $15 per bag for their time and effort. The agency has budgeted $33,000 for the work, money raised from fines for stormwater pollution and other violations of state environmental regulations. This is the only transplant scheduled this year that will pay quahoggers. A voluntary transplant is set for May 15th, but it's not expected to draw as many participants. Everyone agrees that these transplants are an effective way to bolster the number of quahogs that can be harvested from the bay, yet the DEM doesn't have money to do more. At the moment, we are still funding limited, said Anna Gerber-Williams, principal marine biologist with the agency. We are seeking new ways to boost the program. That includes a request for up to $200,000 in the state budget for the next fiscal year that's currently under review by the General Assembly. The long-term goal is to create a more robust transplant program, similar to what was in place in the past, when the work was funded through the budget instead of having to rely on revenue from environmental violations. From the mid-1950s to the mid-70s, an average of 2.5 million pounds of quahogs were transplanted annually in the Bay. The number plummeted to 100,000 pounds between 1993 and 2001, and since 2010, the program has been sporadic and shrunk even more to about 44,000 pounds a year. Michael McGivney, president of the Rhode Island Shell Fishermen's Association, says he hasn't heard whether the money will come this year. The wheels of government run slow, I guess, he says. Quahogging has been in decline in Rhode Island for decades, but the drop in harvests has only seemed to accelerate in recent years. Annual landings fell again in 2023, the most recent year for official numbers, down by 13% from the year before. The annual harvest of 2023 of about 359,000 meat pounds was less than half of what it was a decade ago, and less than a tenth of harvests during the last big peak for the industry in the early 1980s. Data for 2024 have yet to be released, but Gerber Williams says she's been reviewing the numbers and that landings were down slightly from 2023. It's generally a trend of general decline, she says. Concerns over the future of the industry sparked the creation of a special legislative commission a year and a half ago that aimed to take a closer look at the possible reasons for the drop-off in landings and come up with solutions. The 13 commission members, who included McGivney and other shell fishermen, along with ocean scientists and regulators from the DEM, weren't able to settle on definitive causes over the course of 8 hearings, though they heard evidence of impacts from climate change and from reductions in nutrients released by wastewater treatment plants that empty into the bay. And while their final report issued last June asked for the DEM to potentially develop a plan to up nitrogen releases from the plants aimed at stimulating the growth of microscopic algae that quahogs feed on, they were definitive in their desire to see more transplants and more work to seed the bay with baby quahogs. But in the 11 months since the report came out, there haven't been any big changes for the industry, says McGivney. He points to another recommendation in the report, the creation of a permanent quahog advisory board. Though there's still talk of setting it up, nothing has happened yet. Seeking solutions. That's not to say that there hasn't been some progress. Gerber Williams says that she and marine scientists at the University of Rhode Island are working on another of the Commission's recommendations to improve collaboration and do more academic research. They are fleshing out proposals to learn more about the environmental factors that may be affecting quahog populations. One recent area of concern that she hopes to bring scientists with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in on is Bristol Harbor. One of last year's transplants moved quahogs there, but when Gerber Williams went to check on them this year, they were all dead. A local source of contamination may be one possible cause. I know it's opened the door to additional discussions, and there's a willingness to participate in more research, Gerber Williams says of the commission process. Walter Palm, Director of Environmental Science and Compliance at the Narragansett Bay Commission, which operates the largest wastewater treatment system in the state, says the lines of communication between all parties have improved with last year's work in the General Assembly. Palm, who was a member of the Legislative Commission, still believes that climate change is the driving factor behind changes in quahog numbers, pointing to declines in blue crab populations in Maryland and lobster catches in Maine as a sign of a more universal cause. I think the positive that has come from this is that we're all working together to find solutions, he says. For shell fishermen, The hope is that they can get more days in the lower Providence River waters that reopened to harvesting in 2021 after being closed for 75 years because of pollution. What's known as Area E has been yielding the bulk of landings in recent years. But because it's close to sewage plants farther up the bay, the area is prone to closures during heavy rains, which are becoming more common with climate change. It was open for only 15 days last year. This year, the DEM is allowing harvesters there on 23 days, but McGivney worries about washouts. It's feast or famine, he says. Studies have found that quahog numbers are high north of Area E, and while shell fishermen aren't allowed there now because of concerns over contamination, McGivney says the waters are ripe for transplants. But until more funding is allocated, he and other commercial license holders will have to make do with the quahogs from Greenwich Cove. Quahogs thrive in the sheltered cove, which is tucked between Goddard Memorial State Park and the East Greenwich waterfront. The waters are rich in nutrients that help fuel the growth of algae that are so important to the mollusks. But the area is also prone to high counts of bacteria from runoff, which renders quahogs there unsafe to eat, making the cove off-limits to harvesting. By moving the quahogs grown there just a half-mile north to the clearer and more open waters of Greenwich Bay, they become safe for consumption within a matter of weeks. On this morning, the cove is full of bull rakers working from their skiffs. It's a scene reminiscent of the fishery's heyday, when hordes of boats would jam together working the bay's rich beds. Because nobody rakes these waters at any other time of the year, the work is easy. By morning's end, they'll have more than 76,200 pounds of quahogs, the most of any transplant in the last 5 years. After just a couple of hours, Mike and Al Papa have more than filled their quota. With so many bags of quahogs weighing it down, their little skiff rides noticeably low in the water. As Mike motors into Greenwich Bay, he has to throttle down to keep waves from breaking over the sunken bow. Mike is 40 years old, a young age compared with the majority of commercial license holders who are on the wrong side of 50. He's been quahogging since he was 16 and professes a love for what's become a dying profession. His uncle Al is 66 and started shellfishing at 12. He doesn't come out so much anymore. When he was young, he was able to collect enough quahogs for a day's work without having to venture past Sally Rock, which sits at the midpoint of Greenwich Bay. Mike has to go farther afield. Like most quahoggers these days, depends on the beds near the mouth of the Providence River. As he pours quahogs into the water, their shells clattering together as they fall, he says he has no plans to do anything else. I'm just hoping there's change to come, he says. Okay, the next story on the front page is titled Report. Rhode Island children. Sorry about that. The title is Report. Rhode Island children at risk of losing federally funded support. And this is written by Johnny Williams. Rhode Island Kids Count, a nonprofit that tracks the well-being of children in the state, released its 31st annual report on May 5th. In many ways, this year's report was similar to years prior, replete with charts, tables, and statistics that paint a portrait of how children are faring economically, educationally, and health-wise in the state. The newest report, however, came with a stark warning. Children need stability, care, and opportunity to thrive. However, many programs that Rhode Island children and families rely on are currently under threat, said the report's executive summary. In fact, the summary argues tens of thousands of children could lose benefits that provide access to education, health care, and meals through federally funded programs. Among these are nearly 45,000 children on Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program SNAP benefits, Nearly 118,000 children enrolled in Right Care, Rhode Island's Medicaid CHIP health insurance program, more than 35,000 children who participated in the school breakfast program, nearly 76,000 students, more than half the students in the state, who participated in the National School Lunch Program, 1,438 children enrolled in Head Start, a federally funded early childhood program for preschool children who are low income or have high needs. Several of these programs could see cuts as Congress mulls several budgetary bills. DEI under threat, report warns. The report also warned that President Donald Trump's administration is targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, cutting funding for initiatives that have those terms in their programs. Population data indicates that Rhode Island is becoming a more racially diverse state. In 2020, nearly half, 47%, of all children under 18 were American Indian, Asian, Black, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, or two or more races combined, compared with just 28% of adults. Economic disparities also persist between races. Black and Hispanic children were more than 3 times more likely to be in poverty than white children, according to data from 2019 to 2023. Unacceptable disparities will continue to persist among children and families if equity and equitable policies and investments are removed, the executive summary said. The threats come as children in the state have experienced some setbacks to their well-being in recent years. For example, the number of children who were homeless increased by 13% from 1,739 in the 2022-23 school year to 1,966 in the 2023-24 school year. Child poverty also increased from 11.7% in 2022 to 13.3% in 2023, though it is down from 15% in 2021. And the percentage of children without health insurance climbed from 2.1% in 2022 to 3.3% in 2023. Okay, moving on from the front page, there's a story titled, "In Naked Fat Test, Aaron Thomas Admits He Lied to Police." South Kingston. And this is by Tom Mooney. For the love of coaching and the fear of being fired, that was why former North Kingston High School basketball coach Aaron Thomas said he lied to police investigators. They had called him in for an interview in February 2021. They wanted to know, was it true that the veteran coach was inviting student athletes to meet with him alone and strip naked for body composition testing? Thomas repeatedly denied the allegations, but on the witness stand on May 6th, Thomas admitted to a Superior Court jury that he lied that day. "Why were you not completely truthful with the police?" asked the defense lawyer, John L. Calcagni. At the time, Thomas explained, it had already been 10 days since he had been suspended from the school department over the allegations, 10 days away from his basketball team, and I was trying to do whatever I could to try to find out who was behind this, he said, but more importantly, how quickly I could get back to my basketball team. We were headed for the playoffs. Thomas's admission came on the third day he was on the stand under direct examination in his trial in the Washington County Superior Court. State prosecutors charged Thomas in 2022 with 1 count of second-degree child molestation and 1 count of second-degree sexual assault after controversy erupted over his decades-long practice of having male student athletes strip, sometimes naked, for private body fat testing. He has pleaded not guilty to the charges, and on May 6th, he also apologized. Asked by Calagny to reflect on the past of changing times and social attitudes, do you have thoughts and feelings about your prior practices? I do. I'm truly sorry that it occurred the way it occurred, said Thomas. It was never my intent to ever hurt or cause any kind of pain or embarrass or make uncomfortable even any student athletes. The testing protocol he used was just for a competitive athletic advantage, but when I look back on it now, I see how it is construed. I take full responsibility for it. It was a foolish thing. Prosecutors must prove intent, age of students, and naked fat test case. Thomas denied that he ever touched any athlete's genitals or received any sexual pleasure from performing the tests. An important detail, since prosecutors must prove that Thomas acted for sexual gratification purposes to win a conviction on at least one of the charges. And he denied the claim of one testifying former student athlete that Thomas had an erection during one test. Thomas also denied ever testing a student under the age of 14, another component of the child molestation charge. For 3 days, Kalagny's questions were primarily focused on Thomas's testing methods and how he never deviated from his habitual practices of measuring and recording data into a spreadsheet for each student that he would share with them. Thomas said about 80% of his testing student athletes would lower or remove their underwear shorts when he posed the usual question, shy or not shy, in preparation for performing skin fold measurements of their upper thigh area. I've always determined in my research it's skin on skin for the best measuring results. If you start measuring on clothing, it's going to throw off the reliability of your measurement. But Thomas admitted that the test could be performed over clothing, as 2 medical professionals have testified. Thomas said he also used his thumbs to press on the athlete's adductor muscles to check for muscle tightness or areas of knotted tissue and to possibly diagnose groin strains, which could cause a serious setback for basketball players in particular. His use of the word diagnose brought a quick objection from prosecutor Timothy Healy, who reminded the court that Thomas had no formal training for the testing he performed. Thomas said several athletes continued to have him do their body composition testing after they graduated from high school. Thomas said at no time did any student athlete complain to him personally or say they felt uncomfortable with his testing procedure. I would have ceased the activity and contacted their parents, he said. In 2018, former Superintendent Phil Auger testified. He called Thomas into the high school principal's office to discuss what a former student had told him at the gym. Thomas was testing athletes alone in his office. Auger, the principal and the athletic director, told Thomas that moving forward, this testing would only be done with another adult in the room, and the school would use a machine that didn't require Thomas to physically touch the students. Still, Thomas continued testing a few athletes the hands-on way because he testified his method was more accurate. It was foolish of me, he said. I take full responsibility for it. I felt an obligation to help them, and as they're my players, and trying to get better. In one case, a student was trying to play at the college level, and the testing machine, said Thomas, wasn't working for him. Against my better judgment, I did test those athletes, he said. I own that. As to what Thomas had told a detective in the 2021 interview, Kalagny asked his client, why didn't you just tell him the truth, the way he had to the jury? That for 28 years he had tested some 600 students the way he had taught himself to do, including take measurements of their naked upper thigh area. Consistency led to accuracy, he testified. Why didn't you just tell him? Asked Kalagny. I should have done that, Thomas said. It would have been the right thing to do, and it would have prevented a lot of embarrassment I'm under. I didn't do it because I had already talked to Dr. Auger, the school superintendent, about it and denied the allegation to him. Therefore, Thomas said he lied again to the police, thinking that I could get back to the team faster. That was my best answer. What did he think would happen if he was indeed honest with the police interviewing him? My concern was I would definitely lose my job. I thought any investigation, any mention of topics like this, just the way they explode in the media, everything is just going to build up against you. There's no way to come back from it. That's why I'll never coach or teach again. Prosecutors are expected to begin their cross-examination of Thomas on May 7th. Okay, the next article that is local is titled Newport Seafood Market Opens in Middletown, and it's written by Gail Chiampa of the Providence Journal. Fresh, raw, and prepared local seafood is what's new at 800 Aquidneck Avenue in Middletown. Think ready-to-go stuffies, lobster rolls, and fried clam sandwiches, as well as fresh snapper, live lobsters, and the catch of the day. The Newport Seafood Market opened on Monday, May 5th, the newest business from Heritage Hospitality. The market also features everything needed to prepare and serve a seafood boil at home, including pots, cookbooks, and utensils. The market is a retail expansion of the Newport Lobster Company, the wholesale company Heritage acquired a year and a half ago, said Nick Schorsch, Jr., partner at the Newport Seafood Market and Newport Lobster Company. We loved the idea of providing items of fresh seafood, he said in an interview. It's one-stop shopping. The market will provide the same items that Newport Lobster has been trucking out across Rhode Island to restaurants and other seafood businesses for more than 2 decades, he said. People know what kinds of chefs and fishermen they have, said Schorsch. It wasn't unusual for regular people to drop by Newport Lobster hoping to buy a few lobsters, he said. They had no arrangements to make such sales, but they saw a new business opportunity. Newport Lobster is in the same building as Aquidneck Meat Market. Schorsch said having the meat and seafood markets so close will also make it easy for shoppers to satisfy all their dinner needs. Brad Matthews, longtime general manager at Newport Lobster, former chef at the Pier, and a commercial fisherman, has also stocked his favorite salts, marinades, and sauces for shoppers. Boutique shopping at the market features many dry goods. We threw everything but the kitchen sink into the mix, said Schorsch. There are crackers and proper forks for lobster and crabs, and the right vessels for drawn butter. There are also pots and more. We thought about where would you go on the island to get all those things you need in one place, he said. Now they will see what the public buys and adjust their inventory, he added. The cases at the market include prepared foods, including stuffies. You can order a whole belly clam sandwich. Right now, a lobster roll with French fries costs $23, but it'll be adjusted for market price. On the specials board at press time were pre-marinated octopus. Fresh fish of the day was black sea bass and red snapper. I'm running out of time to finish the details, but basically they're happy to do special orders, and the market is open from 11 to 7 weekdays, 11 to 5 on weekends. And learn more at newportseafoodmarket.com or call 401-682-7117.